My family took my car and went on a secret trip, acting like I didn't even exist. I kept quiet, but then one thing happened that changed everything. They thought they could boss my mom around. Linda, my mom, didn't help much either. She just went along with whatever they wanted, no matter how unfair it was. Her favorite phrase was, "That's just how they are," like it was a magic excuse to let them get away with everything. Alan's selfish attitude started even before I was born. He acted like the world owed him, and having kids was just a way to get more people to do his work. He once told me that his parents never said no to him. If he wanted something, he got it right away. He said that's how family should be, but really he meant everyone should do what he says or else. Jason was just like Alan but younger and even more annoying about it. Whenever Alan said something, Jason was right there backing him up like a little sidekick. He didn't just copy Alan's selfishness, he made it worse. He mocked me for being too sensitive when I stood up for myself. If Alan took something of mine, Jason would laugh and tell me I was being dramatic. They were like a two-person team wrecking my peace of mind. I lost count of how many times they took my stuff just because they thought it was theirs. One time, I saved for weeks to buy a new laptop for school. I was so proud when I finally got it. But 2 days later, Jason grabbed it and started installing games without asking. When I told him to stop, he said, "Relax, you're not even using it." Alan jumped in, "He's your brother, let him borrow it." Borrow? I never saw my laptop again without Jason's greasy fingerprints all over. This was my life with them. Alan took whatever he wanted, and Jason always helped him. Mom just shrugged and said, "Boys will be boys." No one ever stood up for me. I learned early on that if I wanted to keep something, I had to hide it or make sure they couldn't touch it. By the time I was 18, I knew I had to get out. Living under their roof was suffocating. Every day reminded me I didn't own anything, not my stuff, not my time, not even a little piece. So I saved every penny from my part-time job at a hardware store. That's how I got my 1998 Honda Accord. It wasn't much rusty, cracked taillight, and an engine that sounded like it smoked too much, but it was mine. I spent months fixing it up. Every paycheck went to new tires, repairs, a tune-up, and a new battery. I wasn't just fixing a car, I was building my escape plan. But Alan and Jason didn't see it that way. To them, my car wasn't my hard work or freedom, it was just something else they could take whenever they wanted. They ignored my boundaries. Jason took the car without asking the first time. I came home from work and it was gone. I panicked, called everyone, and Jason walked in hours later like nothing happened. He threw me the keys and said, "Relax, I just took it for a spin." Alan backed him up, "It's just a car. Don't make a big deal." Things only got worse. Every time I turned around, the car was missing. Most days, I came home from a long shift to find out they had been using it without permission. One day, they returned it with a huge dent on the side. I lost it. "What happened to my car?" I yelled. Jason shrugged, "It's old, who cares?" Alan added, "You should be grateful we even brought it back." That's when I started hiding the keys. I wasn't going to let them ruin the one thing I had. But hiding the keys only made them more determined. One night, I woke up to Jason rummaging through my room looking for them. When I caught him, he just laughed, "Don't be so paranoid." The last straw was when the car disappeared again. This time, Alan found the spare key I didn't know about, and he and Jason took the car on one of their wild trips. Hours later, the police called me. Alan had been pulled over for speeding, and Jason was laughing in the passenger seat. When I went to pick up the car, Alan had the nerve to lecture me. "If you weren't so selfish, we wouldn't have to do this," he said. I snapped, "You stole my car." Back at home, Alan sat me down and dropped the bomb. "If you can't live under my roof, you're out. 2 weeks to pack." Jason smirked like he won a prize. "Good luck out there," he said, full of fake sympathy. Getting kicked out hurt, but honestly, I saw it coming. Alan always needed the last word, and Jason loved stirring up trouble. What hurt the most was how smug they were, like they thought they were teaching me a lesson. That night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how I ended up here. All I wanted was something that was truly mine. That old Honda was supposed to be my way out, and now it was wrecked, and I was homeless. The next morning, I walked outside to look at the car. It sat in the driveway like always, but it felt different. The dent was still there, staring at me like a scar from all the battles they'd fought against me. The inside smelled like fast food and sweat, and the back seat was full of trash, soda cans, wrappers. My car, my hard work, turned into their garbage bin. I started cleaning it out, muttering to myself, selfish, huh? Who's really selfish here? Throwing out the trash felt like throwing out a little bit of their selfishness, but it didn't make me feel better. The damage was done. As I wiped the dashboard, Alan came out with his coffee, acting like he owned everything, which he did. He leaned on the porch railing, watching me like a hawk. "What's your plan, genius?" he asked. I didn't even look at him. "What's it to you?" He laughed, like I said the funniest thing ever. "Do you really think you can survive without us? Good luck." Jason appeared behind him, shirtless and eating cereal like he didn't have a care in the world. "Yeah, you'll be back crawling in a month. Bet money on it." I wanted to yell, but what was the point? They already made up their minds. Anything I said would only make it worse. So, I kept cleaning. Alan eventually went back inside, bored, but Jason stayed, leaning on the porch like he owned the place. "You don't have what it takes to make it on your own," he said between bites. I looked at him for a second, thought about saying something, but realized he just wanted to annoy me. So I slammed the car door and went back inside to pack. Packing was strange, emotional. I didn't have much, but every little thing I owned felt like a small victory. Clothes, books, tools, all had stories. Stories of me working hard to buy or fix things, only for Alan or Jason to act like it was nothing. I shoved everything into 2 duffel bags and a toolbox, but it didn't feel like enough. What was I even going to do? I had no plan, no money for an apartment, and I wasn't about to stay with relatives who sided with Alan. One thing was clear, I couldn't stay here another day. Loading up the car felt like the first real step to freedom, even though I didn't know where I was headed. I tossed my bags in the back seat and checked the glove box, a couple $100 saved up. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I had a couple $100 saved up, just enough to get me by for a little while, but not much longer than that. For a moment, I thought about going back inside. Maybe I should swallow my pride and say sorry. Sorry for what exactly? For standing up for myself? No way. I shook my head and started the car. There was nothing left for me there. As I drove out of the driveway, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Relief because I was finally leaving them behind. Fear because I didn't know what was next. Where would I sleep tonight? What if my car broke down? What if they were right and I couldn't make it on my own? I drove without a real destination, trying to clear my head. Eventually, I found myself in a grocery store parking lot. I parked far away from everyone else and just sat there for a while. It felt like I was stuck between 2 worlds, the life I was leaving and whatever was coming next. That night, I slept in the car, curled up in the driver's seat using my hoodie as a pillow. The next morning, I woke up stiff and tired, but determined. I wasn't going to let Alan and Jason be right about me. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to figure it out. They thought they broke me, but they hadn't. They were about to see what I could really do. While scrolling on my phone, still half asleep and sore from sleeping weird, I stumbled on a video about tiny homes. At first, I laughed. Those homes looked fancy, and there was no way I could afford something like that. Then, I saw a picture of a 5th-wheel camper. It wasn't pretty, but it had potential. Small, portable, and best of all, affordable. Suddenly, it clicked. A camper wasn't just a place to sleep, it was freedom. For the next few days, I dove into online listings. It became an obsession. Every break at work, every quiet moment in the car, I was scrolling through Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace looking for something cheap that wouldn't drain my savings. Most of the listings were way too expensive, $20,000 or more for campers that looked like they belonged on a reality TV show. Then, I found it, a 2001 Keystone Cougar fifth wheel. The pictures weren't great, but I could tell it had good bones. It was old enough to be cheap but solid enough to last. The seller, Sam, wanted $3,500, which was still a lot for me, but maybe I could talk him down. A few days later, I drove out to Sam's place, about 45 minutes from where I was parked. He showed me the camper sitting on an overgrown patch of grass like it had been forgotten. The paint was faded, and there were dents, but it looked sturdy. "She's a little rough," Sam admitted, "but the plumbing works, the roof doesn't leak, and the tires are new." I walked around, checking every corner. Inside was cramped and old, with peeling wallpaper and a musty smell, but it had everything I needed: a small kitchen, a bathroom, and space for a bed. "How firm are you on the price?" I asked, trying to sound confident, even though my stomach was twisting. Sam thought for a moment. "Tell you what. If you can haul it out of here this week, I'll knock it down to $3,000. It was still a lot, but I couldn't pass it up. "Deal," I said, shaking his hand. Next came the problem of towing it. My Honda couldn't handle that. I called my cousin Ethan, one of the few family members who wasn't caught up in my dad's drama. Ethan was the kind of guy who always had a solution, usually involving tools or trucks or both. When I told him my plan, he didn't hesitate. "Bring your car over. We'll figure it out." Ethan's place was about 20 minutes outside town, on a big piece of land where he kept his collection of old trucks and project cars. His garage was every mechanic's dream. When I arrived, he was outside wiping his hands on a rag. "So, you're really doing this, huh?" he said with a grin, leaning against his truck. "Yeah," I said, "I have to get out of here. This is the only way I can afford my own space." He nodded like he understood perfectly. "All right, let's see what we're working with." We spent the afternoon rigging up his truck to tow the camper. Ethan had a talent for making things work, even if it meant bending some rules. When we finished, his truck was ready to haul, and for the first time, I felt like this could actually happen. "You can park it here if you need," Ethan said as we wrapped up. "I've got plenty of space, and it's not like your dad's going to show up here." "Thanks," I said, feeling relieved. "I owe you big time." The next day, we drove to Sam's to pick up the camper. Towing it back to Ethan's place was nerve-wracking. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting something to go wrong. But we made it safely. The first night in the camper was surreal. It wasn't fancy by any means. I slept on an old mattress that smelled like mildew, surrounded by peeling wallpaper and a sink that dripped if you didn't turn it off just right. Over the next few days, I started fixing it up. I scrubbed every surface, patched a small hole in the floor, and added cheap string lights from the dollar store. Ethan helped me hook up a water supply, and I found a used propane tank for the stove. It wasn't much, but it was starting to feel like home. I thought moving out would bring me peace. But Alan and Jason didn't let things go. I didn't tell them where I was, but word got out somehow. Someone must have mentioned my camper, thinking they were being polite. Next thing I knew, they were back in my life. One day, Ethan came by while I was working on the roof. "You got company?" he asked, pointing toward the driveway. I climbed down and saw Alan's old truck pulling in, Jason in the passenger seat. "Great," I muttered, wiping my hands on my jeans. "What do they want now?" Alan got out first, acting like he owned the place. Jason followed, wearing his usual smug grin. They didn't even say hello. Alan walked up to the camper, looking it over like he was judging it. "Nice setup you've got," he said, his tone fake polite. "Looks like it needs some TLC. You keeping up with the maintenance?" "What do you want, Dad?" I asked, crossing my arms. Alan smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "We've been talking. We think it's time you showed some gratitude. Let us take the camper for a weekend. It's not like you're doing anything important with it." Jason jumped in before I could answer. "Yeah, it's just sitting there. You can live without it for a couple of days." My blood started to boil, but I took a deep breath. "No. This is my home. I'm not lending it to you." Alan's face turned hard. You're being ridiculous. We're family. Families help each other. Funny how that only works when it benefits you, I shot back. Jason rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Always the victim, huh? I ignored him and looked at Alan. You've taken enough from me. The answer's no. Ethan, who'd been watching, came over and stood by me. You heard him, he said. No means no. Alan glared at Ethan like he was a traitor. This doesn't concern you. Ethan smirked. It does when you're on my property. For a moment, I thought Alan might lose it, but instead, he shook his head and muttered, unbelievable. Then he turned to Jason. Let's go. You'll regret this, Jason said as they drove off. I wish I could say that was the end, but it wasn't. A few days later, I started getting calls and texts from family members. Alan and Jason were spinning their version of the story. According to them, I was selfish and ungrateful, refusing to help out my poor dad who just wanted a nice weekend away. Why can't you just let him borrow it? One aunt asked over the phone. It's not like you're using it. It's my home, I said for the 100th time. Would you let someone take your house for a weekend? That's different, she argued. He's your father. Exactly, I said. That was the problem. The calls didn't stop. Everyone had an opinion, and most weren't on my side. I started ignoring my phone altogether. Ethan tried to cheer me up by joking that Alan and Jason were like bad movie villains, always plotting their next move. It was funny at first, but the constant pressure wore me down. The breaking point came when they showed up again. I was outside, enjoying a rare moment of peace, when I heard their truck rumble up the driveway. I groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Alan didn't even bother saying hello. He got out and pointed at the camper. We're taking it, he said like it was already decided. I stood up. Hell no. Jason leaned on the truck, smirking. We figured we'd give you a chance to do the right thing, but you're just too stubborn. Ethan came out of the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. You're not taking anything, he said, calm but firm. Unless you want me to call the cops. Alan looked shocked. You wouldn't dare. Ethan didn't flinch. Try me. There was a tense moment where I thought things might get physical, but Alan backed down. He muttered something and got back in the truck. Jason waved sarcastically. This isn't over. I thought things would settle after Ethan stood up to them. But Alan and Jason don't let things go, especially when they feel disrespected. For them, it wasn't just about the camper. It was about control. They couldn't have the camper. If they did, they'd make me regret it. A few weeks went by without any trouble, and I started to think maybe they'd finally given up. Ethan even joked one night while we worked on his truck, think they're plotting their next move or did I scare them off for good? Probably both, I said. Alan was never one to forgive and forget. I should have known better than to think the quiet meant anything good. They were just waiting for the right moment. It was late, maybe 2 or 3 a.m., when I woke up to noises outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind. Ethan's place was open, and the camper creaked in the breeze sometimes. But this wasn't the wind. It was footsteps, slow and careful, followed by the sharp clink of metal hitting the camper hitch. My stomach dropped. I got up quietly, heart pounding, and peeked through the window. There they were, Alan and Jason, crouched by the camper, trying to unhook it. Alan fumbled with the locks while Jason shone a flashlight, glancing around nervously like kids caught stealing cookies. For a moment, I just froze. I couldn't believe they'd stooped this low. Then the shock turned to anger. This wasn't some petty fight anymore, they were trying to steal my home. I grabbed my phone, threw on a hoodie, and burst outside. What the hell do you think you're doing? They jumped. Alan dropped the tools. Jason tried to play it cool. Relax, man. We were just. Don't even start. I cut him off. You're trying to steal my camper in the middle of the night? Are you insane? Alan stood up, brushing off his hands like he hadn't just been caught. It's not stealing. We're family. We just wanted to borrow it for a couple of days. You mean steal it? I shot back. Jason stepped forward, flashlight still in hand. Don't be so dramatic. We weren't keeping it. Get off my property before I call the cops, I said, pointing toward their truck. Alan sneered. You'd call the cops on your own father over this? Jason rolled his eyes. Here we go again. Always the victim. You need to grow up. Grow up? I laughed bitterly. You're the ones sneaking around like criminals. Before they could say more, Ethan's porch light flicked on and the door swung open. Ethan stepped out, holding a crowbar in one hand and a flashlight in the other. What's going on out here? He asked calmly but firmly. Alan and Jason froze. Alan raised his hands, trying to smooth things over. We're just having a little family disagreement. Ethan wasn't buying it. Looks like you're trespassing. Care to explain why you're messing with a camper at this hour? Jason tried to talk, but Ethan cut him off. Save it. You've got 30 seconds to get in your truck and leave, or I'm calling the cops myself. They left. Ethan turned to me. You okay? Yeah, I said, heart still racing. Thanks for coming out. He nodded. Figured they'd pull something like this. You should add some extra security. I was already planning on it. This just sealed the deal. The next day, I went into full lockdown mode. Bought motion sensor lights, heavy-duty locks for every door and window. Found a GPS tracker online to attach under the camper, so if they moved it without me knowing, I'd get a notification. Ethan helped install everything. By the time we finished, the camper looked more like a fortress than a home. If they come back, they're going to need a tow truck, Ethan joked, though I knew he was just as frustrated as I was. Alan and Jason didn't try anything for a while, but I was jumpy. Every little noise outside made me check the locks again. It wasn't just about the camper anymore, it was about feeling safe, and they'd stolen that from me. The real showdown came at the family barbecue. Ethan offered to host that year, and I thought it was a chance to reconnect with the less crazy relatives. I parked the camper off to the side, far enough away for space but close enough to watch it. At first, it was good. I caught up with cousins, played cornhole, even laughed a little. Maybe for one day, we could have a drama-free family event. Then Alan showed up. The moment he saw the camper, his face twisted. He marched straight to me, Jason right behind him, smirking. You really brought it here? Alan said loud enough for everyone to hear. Couldn't let your old man borrow it? But you drag it out here just to show off. I sighed, tired already. It's my home, Dad. I can take it wherever I want. Unbelievable, he scoffed. You don't care about family at all after everything we've done for you. Jason jumped in, yeah, real classy. You're making this all about you. A small crowd gathered, clearly enjoying the drama. Before I could say anything, Chloe, one of my cousins, stepped in. Honestly, he's right, she said, arms crossed. Maybe you two should stop treating him like garbage. This isn't about the camper. It's about control. Everyone here knows it. Alan turned red. Jason looked like he'd been slapped. The rest of the family stayed quiet, probably the smartest choice. Alan muttered something about nobody respecting him anymore and stormed off, Jason trailing behind. I didn't win any popularity points that day, but I didn't care. For once, someone had called them out and it wasn't just me. The next morning, we moved the camper closer to Ethan's garage. Not as pretty as the old spot, but much safer. Ethan helped install a new motion sensor light that covered the entire driveway. If Alan and Jason tried anything, they'd be lit up like a Christmas tree. I also set up an alert on my phone with the GPS tracker. If the camper moved more than a few feet without me knowing, I'd get an instant notification. Alan and Jason didn't show up again, for now. But I knew it was only a matter of time. They'd made it clear, They weren't letting this go. And I wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about a camper anymore. It was about standing my ground. Sitting inside the camper that night, under the soft glow of the string lights I'd put up, I felt exhausted but determined. They could try all they wanted, but this was my home, and I wasn't giving up without a fight. Things stayed quiet for a while. Alan and Jason probably realized showing up uninvited wasn't working, especially with Ethan ready to shut them down. But knowing them, I couldn't shake the feeling they were planning something. They never let things go, they just wait for the right moment. That moment came when I had to leave town for work, a few days helping at another branch. Before I left, I triple-checked everything. Camper locked tight, GPS set, Ethan promised to watch it. I even joked about needing a security detail. "Don't worry," he said with a smirk. "If they try anything, I'll handle it." I didn't think they'd dare try again, at least, not after the first night. But the first night I was gone, I got a notification from the GPS tracker. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe the wind or a curious animal set off the sensors. But when I checked the app, my heart sank. The camper was moving on the highway, heading away from Ethan's property. I stared at the screen, stunned. It wasn't just moving a little. It was driving down the road. I called Ethan, voice shaking. "Did you move the camper?" "No," he said, confused. "Why?" "It's gone," I said. "The GPS shows it's halfway to town." A silence followed, then Ethan cursed. "Son of a, it's got to be your dad." I called the police, trying to explain my dad had stolen my camper. The dispatcher asked for proof, so I gave them the title and GPS logs. They said they'd send officers to stop the vehicle and warned me not to confront him myself. I wasn't near the camper anyway. Meanwhile, Ethan wasn't waiting. "Send me the GPS location," he said. "I'm heading out." I gave him the coordinates and sat, helpless and furious. Alan and Jason had gone too far this time. It didn't take long for Ethan to catch up. He called me as soon as he saw them. "They're on Old Mill Road," he said. "I'm staying back until the cops arrive, but I see them clear." "Your dad's driving, Jason's in the passenger seat." "Figures," I muttered. "Keep watching." A few minutes later, the police arrived and pulled Alan over as he turned into his driveway. Ethan stayed on the line, describing everything. Alan tried to argue, but the officers weren't buying it. Hearing that gave me a small rush of satisfaction. Alan always talked his way out of trouble, but this time he'd gone too far. The call ended when Ethan said he'd head back after the police took care of things. When I got back to town, Alan was arrested. Jason wasn't charged since he wasn't driving, but apparently, he threw a fit when they took Alan away. At the police station, the officer was surprisingly understanding. "Are you sure you want to press charges?" she asked. "He's your father." "Yes," I said without hesitation. "He's crossed the line my whole life, and I'm done letting him get away with it." Alan pleaded guilty weeks later. He avoided jail but got a hefty fine and had to pay for the damage. I heard he was furious, but I didn't care. I was done with his excuses. Jason sulked like a victim and even tried calling me once. I didn't answer. The rest of the family was split. Some thought I'd gone too far, that I should have let Alan borrow the camper to avoid drama. Others, like Chloe, said it was about time someone stood up to him. For the first time, I didn't care what anyone thought. I was finally free. With Alan and Jason out of the picture, I decided it was time to hit the road. I'd saved enough to start fresh. Ethan helped me get the camper ready and added a few more security features just in case. "You're really leaving, huh?" Ethan said as we hooked up the camper to my truck. "Yeah," I said. "It's time." He nodded. "Don't be a stranger. If Alan or Jason try anything, call me. I'll handle it." I laughed. "Thanks for everything." Driving away from Ethan's place felt surreal. For the first time, I wasn't running from something, I was running toward something. I didn't know where I was going, but but that didn't matter. What mattered was that it was my choice. I spent the first few nights parked just outside town, getting used to life on the road. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful. At night, I'd sit outside the camper, staring at the stars and feeling calmer than ever before. One evening, by a small campfire, I thought about everything that brought me here: Alan, Jason, the family drama. It felt far away now. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Completely on my own. Free.